Hello and welcome back to Overview Overwatch. This is a new week for us. We didn't get an episode out last week, but we did manage to get a bit of an overhaul on our graphics. So as you can see here, everything is looking very fancy and better than that handmade stuff that I put together. But more importantly, I'm joined today by two guests. These are the coaches of Fancy Fella. Guys, could you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm PnR. I'm the coach and owner of Fancy Fellas in Tier 3 slash Tier 2, I guess.
Yeah, I'm Vision. I'm a long-time coach in EU. Coached a few teams, mostly fancy fellas though, for the majority of my career. But yeah, it's mostly what I do.
Brilliant. And guys, again, before I go any further, I need to know, who do you guys main? I'll start with Vision here. Who's your main hero?
I mean, it's kind of rocky because I'm absolutely terrible at the game. But I mean, I guess at the moment I'd say Ramatra because he's pretty cool. Um, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes I would say it might be like I would say Arissa, but I'm not saying that right now because that's not a good thing to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's check on Ramacha. Yeah.
Perfect. And PnR yourself?
Well, I used to be like an off-tank player, but I think it's either between Zarya and Sig. I'd probably say Sigma a bit more. Is probably one of my mains, just the
Okay,
main hero I would play.
fair. Okay, I want to take those two in particular then. I want to take Ramatra and I want to take Sigma. So I don't think there's been much of either of those guys in competitive or we'll say, professional play since Overwatch 2. We'd see a little bit of Sigma maybe on Circuit Royale or something like that. But do you think these guys need some balance changes? What about Sigma? Do you think possibly needs a bit of a retuning?
I think with Sig, it's like he's a character that, if used like correctly, I think he's a bit underrated in a lot of the power. Like you see with Yab near the end of last contender season, where they played a bit of the Sojourn, Tracer, Kerry, Lucio, and they played Sig with it as well. And you also saw in Korea O2 Blast, as much as they're a bit they're crazy at the game, all those players, but they were also trying out the Sigma and everything. So I think he's a bit underrated. I don't know how much he would need changed. I just think if other characters got changed about, he might see himself maybe flying a bit more in the metas.
And what about Ramatra then, Vision?
I think the guy's okay. I'm not sure exactly how I would change him at the moment because the way he interacts in ranked and the way he interacts in scrims are very different.
Mm.
However, there's like a few really niche situations where I could like 100% say I would play Ramacha here in scrims at the moment. But because the meta isn't fully fleshed out yet, I'm not sure it's going to hold. But I think the character overall, maybe they tune his ult a bit and they tune Nemesis in general. Like the main thing that I find concerning is maybe like the actual uptime. So maybe move it from like from 8 second cooldown to like a 4 second cooldown and a 4 second uptime, so you can rotate it more. But again, then you'd probably have the cooldowns up too often.
Yeah.
It would make the character really strange. So at the moment, I'm not sure how I would tweak him, but I think he definitely has a place, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things about Ramatra is he's just one of the most fun tanks to play at the moment. Like you guys are saying with Orisa, there's a lot of Orisa being played and not a very popular tank at the moment. But she's just not. Well, personally, I don't find her that fun. Compared to someone like Ramatra or maybe even some of the divier tanks where there's probably a bit more of a skill ceiling to it. I think Ramatra kind of fits into that niche there as being that really fun tank. So I'd like to see him personally get a little bit more playtime, but yeah, it's a tough one to balance around. There's another tank currently being played that maybe not so much in scrims, but definitely on the ladder that's getting an awful lot of flack, and that's a Roadhog.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about Roadhog's position in sort of maybe the competitive meta and then also the professional meta and how they're not really too aligned?
Mm. Uh, the character's very annoying. I guess the thing is, like, people don't really understand the context in which he was played in like scrims or like in a competitive environment, and it's very different to ranked. Naturally, they coincide because if people are practicing Hog for scrims, they're going to be playing him in ranked more. But there's always been a high level of Hog one tricks and Hog volume in ranked. but it's like the character was never like truly like the meta character. He was just a response to the meta. Like, for example, you would always see some really good teams that play the monkey meta flawlessly, and on some maps, maybe like Orisa and Roadhog would just feel more optimal in general, like just as the genuine pick. But almost everywhere in the former meta, I would say that the monkey comp is generally better given more time to practice. But considering the tournaments that we had and how long we had to prepare for them, Roadhog just saw a shit ton of playtime because he's super easy to prepare. The coaching required for it is super basic, and you can prepare that super quickly. In ranked, he just needs changes because it plays on the fact that there's little to no coordination in that environment, and it shouldn't really change, like coordination wise, but players won't adapt to that. He needs to have a different direction as a character for him to feel like a character that's fair in the game.
A couple of technical issues there, but PnR, I want to go to you with that last point. So what direction do you think would be a good direction to bring Hog with the upcoming changes?
Well, I think, yeah, as Vision said, like, Hog's very, it's like a difficult character. If I would say anything, like, obviously they're planning on trying to stop, one shot and stuff like that, because in Overwatch, a thing like, one shotting is not very, healthy for the game a lot of the time. But I also think Hog could be changed with maybe, changes in health and changes in like damage reduction that you get from the heal. Because obviously it's 350 healing and you get a big, damage reduction when you are healing. So mixing that with, Suzu from Kiriko is very oppressing, I would say, in just like the sustain of everything, and using him as just someone that kind of, I guess, distracts and does soak a lot of damage in that sense, opens up a lot more play from your DPS and kind of buys more time for a lot of stuff to happen in the game. So maybe something to do with the HP or reduction of what he gets when he heals.
Interesting. Hopefully that comes sooner rather than later, because I'm frankly fucking sick of it. So anyway, right, let's just go back a bit here and talk about kind of you guys and how you got into the professional side of the coaching. So Vision, I'll go back to you. Where did you kind of get your roots, and how did you come up to where you are now with Fancy Fellas?
I mean, my roots from the start of Overwatch are like in closed beta, which is really far away. I think I was at like 16 or maybe even 15 when I got into the closed beta first wave, and not first wave, it was like third wave. And I like failed all of my GCSEs to play the game. But I mean, I retook most of them and I did okay. But I mean, it was tough, and I played like on some teams. I'm fairly sure I played against Chipser at one point, but I have no clue anymore. But I was super bad at the game then, but it like you could be super bad and kind of weevil your way around. Because I mean, I'm not proud to admit this, but I was a Mercy one trick at the time, and I don't want anyone to quote me on that. But I mean, the character was super basic, and sometimes you would even just find yourself hiding in positions just a res 5. It was super stupid. But then after that, I mean, I quit and I played some other games like Heroes of the Storm kind of competitively, but that game fell through super hard. Now I came back to Overwatch in maybe like fully in 2019, and I started playing in like a diamond team. I was, again, not the best at the game, but I was really passionate about the game and I really wanted to improve. And then from there, I kind of realized that I wasn't really capable as a player. And it's not like players can't improve or like whatever, but I wasn't really willing to put in the work that I needed to be a better player, as a player at the very least, because it wasn't as fulfilling for me as what coaching seemed to be. Like the origin of when I started coaching was like I was like training for a team and they give the other guy the main tank position. I was like, fuck it, I'll coach these guys if you don't mind. And then it eventually fleshed it out. And then my main first team was like Heartbeat Valhalla, and that was with Gio. And it was a super fun experience, and it was a really close team, just like Fancy Fellas is. And that's kind of how I based my like philosophy for team building in the future. So to get here, there wasn't really many teams between that, but I guess there were, and I eventually just landed up in a point where I was like, I'd stopped for a while. I tried a bit of Valorant stuff, and I was like, well, there isn't really any projects I'm interested in joining because they're all like the same 7 people copy and pasted all over the place. This was in like 2021, and it wasn't entertaining. Teams would last for like a week or like one OD cycle, and I wasn't cool with that. So me and PnR decided that we would make Mind Goblin, and that's kind of where we ended up together. And that's my story mostly.
Very good. And then PnR, how do you come up to that same position?
Well, obviously, I'm pretty young, but I was introduced to the game when my older brother, he basically was like, "Oh, you should play the game." So I played it, and I was like bronze when I first started. And I think it was like 2017. I played it on Xbox, but it was when I was on PC. It was 2017. So then I just started playing more and more. But I realized like, oh, I could just play Winston and kind of climb. So I played in like little teams. It was like a plat team, diamond team, masters, all the way up. And in 2019-ish era is when I hit GM as like an off-tank player, and I started playing in teams with players in early 2020 like SXJ and Condi and Streber, who are now currently on Fantasy Fellas. Some of them, Simon, who used to be and is now trialing. But yeah, I played with them, and became really good friends with them the whole time. And as it went on, I realized, I feel like I'd kind of like hit not my peak, but it was the same as Vision, where I felt like I didn't really want to go any further as like a player. But I knew I could offer, I still love the game and I could offer stuff in the game through coaching. So, yeah, funny story. When I met Vision was actually one of the players on the team that I was in when I was playing. We invited me to play Among Us. And that's when I met Vision.
Yeah.
Became pretty good friends with Vision.
Yeah, this all started in some random Among Us lobby, really.
Yeah. And after that, Vision was streaming, and I asked if we could coach. So it was basically like we made a team that was basically Mind Goblin. It had a different name at the time, but it had the basic like the core of Mind Goblin that was taken. And from that point onwards, like with it was called Soulforge. After the team didn't have that good of a OD placement, Vision stopped coaching. I'm pretty sure for not that long, and I took the core. But Vision introduced the whole team to kind of Skeng 1 when they met in person. Skeng and Vision met in person in London, and from that, Skeng picked us up for Team Dominance, which is basically where I coached that main roster, and we built a team around Streber, Yoham, SXJ, and just built a team around them, where we got Wex, Chuzo, and Melon, which was very nice. And from that, played OD with that team and got trials in Overwatch 1, which was very nice. And Vision, right before OD, a couple of weeks before, came back in to coach with me to help us out and everything right before with the prep and everything, and it went really well. And then we had that trials season, so that was good.
Awesome. So, there seems to be somewhat of a on again, off again kind of relationship with you guys in the coaching. So, Vision, I want to go to you with this. You're the one that seems to be the kind of chopping and changing a little bit more. What was it that brought you back those couple of times to work with PnR?
There's numerous reasons. In the case of like Team Dominance, I think it was, I'm not sure what I actually went to go do, but it was probably like some sort of mental break. I have a lot of uni work as well, so I kind of ended up just dipping out sometimes. And it seemed like the team was doing really well, and I mean that's not really the best prospect to rejoin back on. But I also I wanted to come back, and I didn't feel like I had fulfilled my like goal with Mind Goblin, or like fulfilled what I wanted to do like originally. Like the whole Soulforge idea was like a whole fleshed out thing, long term plan, and I felt like I hadn't finished this, so I need to go back and do this. So eventually, I landed back with PnR, and it was super good. Especially that trials one was really, really good for my development as a coach. Generally, just like put things into perspective. The other times were future to that. I think I left after Insomnia, our first Insomnia, mostly because, well, actually, I'm not too sure, but it was another mental thing, I think. And then I moved into SNS with some other Mind Goblin members, and that was another team that played similar to Mind Goblin in the next Insomnia. And then I went to Contenders for the first time with 4D, and after that, I realized that still hadn't fulfilled what I wanted to do with Mind Goblin. Wasn't really prepared for 4D, that sort of Contenders environment yet, and I wanted to help develop my skills and flesh them out more, and try and be like a better coach before I start taking some really big decisions. So that's when I came back to PnR again, and I thought, I might as well finish this off and try and help the players I like working with the most, and see if we can achieve something that not many other teams try to achieve.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And just being able to kind of add on that, you obviously enjoy working together. I assume you guys have somewhat similar styles as to how you approach the role of coaching. PnR, could you talk a little bit about kind of how you come towards coaching and what kind of way you go about it?
Well, like personally with my coaching style, it's more about like creating an environment for the players to learn and push themselves, as well as having it like more live in game, mid rounds, mid scrim type thing, speaking with them, asking, questions, having them answer, thinking about stuff, kind of pushing conversation, pushing opinions. And the main thing with me and Vision is just like we communicate a lot now, when in the past, at some points we weren't speaking as much, so it wasn't working as well. But after coaching with each other,
You're good. You're good.
after longer coaching with each other, we realized like we need to communicate and like tell each other what we're planning, and if we both have opposing views on something, we can speak about it and open it up, and it helps a lot with both coaches in development. So it's just having like an open forum of just players trying to help themselves, because they know how to improve their own gameplay and how they want to play, and kind of setting that up in the environment for them to grow.
Yeah, Vision. PnR speaking about communication being this kind of very important ethos that you would have in a team. Is there anything else that you think would be really important in terms of bringing to a team atmosphere and into the team itself?
Yeah, I mean, specifically between the coaches, it is really about communication a lot and about what you're planning to do. But for a team as a whole, I think a lot of teams lack some level of like. It's tough to say because teams move really fast in the current Overwatch climate. I mean, there are some more long-standing ones now, but like the main goal for us is mostly to have like a strong mesh of people that can work together really well. And that was like my original input. Is like I really wanted the rosters to be built in a way that not necessarily like they're the best players, but they're players that are really going to get along. And over time, they'll encourage each other to work harder and encourage each other to work on their weaknesses or help each other out where they can. I think that's a really important thing for current Overwatch. I mean, there are other approaches, and I think they're all good in their own right. But this approach, I think, is really good, and it's made not only just like a really fun team to be around, but like I don't think that I'm ever going to enjoy being on any other team as much as I am Fancy Fellas, like ever, and that's okay with me. Like it's my career progression, and the future teams are going to be different. But this is probably one of the most fun teams I'll ever be on, and it's still very productive. Like we are very productive, we're very close, and that's what makes it so great. Like I can trust these people, and I can trust them to do the things that is expected of a player. But I can also trust them to be like a great friend, and I think that's something that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's somewhat of an opinion among some coaches that you need to have this sort of very top down approach to coaching. Whereas it seems like if I'm not mistaken, you guys have a very kind of communal side of communal style of coaching. Would that be correct?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Okay, very good to hear. So you mentioned trust being one of those things, this whole community style of thing. Is there any styles of coaching or is there any aspects of a team that you think are quite detrimental to to a team atmosphere or to a team chemistry?
I mean,
You go
I
ahead.
think like just respecting people and like understanding their goals and like a team as a whole is like one of the most crucial things, because obviously as someone who's 17, coaching 23-year-olds, and people a lot older than me, having that respect of them maybe still looking at me as a child is very difficult to build. So you need to like be friends and like understand them, and they'll understand you and listen to you, and everyone will understand the viewpoints of each other, where in a lot of other teams it's maybe you won't have that because you're not able to build it with them because you don't know the person well enough, to actually build it.
Vision, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess trust is super important as well, and I think I think maybe not thoughts on that, but I think probably one of my main feedback for like this sort of environment is that like every environment and every way you approach coaching has its positives and negatives, and the way you balance that is super important. It really does depend on what coach you are, who you are, and who the team you're coaching is. And if you can adapt your approach, that's one of the main things you want in a coach or in a team as well, like in terms of how they can adapt to each other. Like for example, the Mind Goblin style is not going to work on other teams as well as it does here. It simply won't fit a lot of other archetypes of people and stuff like that. It's super important to match it to who you're with. And it's the same with like, it also has its downsides. Like there are some really great upsides, but there are times where it's hard to work in. And there are times where like I realized that, for example, a lot of like this trust stuff and this working together stuff is like, as much as it has a lot more to it than that, it's like this will be a detriment to the players in terms of like their personal development. And that is something that's really crucial. Like, for example, we focus on team development over personal development. While both are really essential and we work on both, it like, for example, there are some really niche like inside jokes, stuff like that, or like inside things that will only ever happen in Mind Goblin that make it hard for a player to move to another team. Whereas other coaching approaches will have like, they'll have more consistency for player development. They'll make the player a better player and do nothing else. But it's still a really amazing approach. So there's no one way to look at it, and every way has its downsides.
That's very interesting.
And
actually,
upsides.
yeah. Very interesting. I want to touch on something, Vision, that you mentioned earlier. You spoke about when you're kind of in and out of Mind Goblin. You mentioned a mental break, and I'm personally of the opinion, when it comes to the players, mental well-being is one of the top priorities. So how do you guys handle that inside of Mind Goblin?
It's complex because I have a pretty important belief that I think you should do what you can, and you can do what you can to help players as much as possible, but you are not a therapist and you're not a licensed professional. And I do everything I can to help my players, but it's the same as like, I have a view with certain types of coaching in that like mental coaching does require a lot of important stuff, and it can be somewhat dangerous to do certain parts of the job without like the proper education. So it's important to know your boundaries with that regard. So mental breaks are super important for players, and monitoring that is probably the best thing that you can do. And you can't always read a person perfectly, but it's easy to pick up on like natural human emotions and stuff like that, especially within our structure. Like we can tell if a player's like naturally frustrated or continuously frustrated over a long period of time, something like that. And we can tell if they need some help or need something to change. And we'll always try and work individually with that person to get the changes they need. And that's the best we can do as well. And we are super close with a lot of these players personally, and that helps a lot with them venting and stuff like that. But again, there has to be a limit. There has to be a boundary. Otherwise, you end up in some pretty dangerous territory, or could, and it's not worth risking that for you or the player.
Yeah, absolutely. PnR, just going back to you here, you're in a very, I would say, quite a unique situation where you are, as you said, kind of at the age of 17, coaching players who are in, early 20s.
Yeah.
Would you have any advice to a coach who maybe is looking to kind of get the respect as a coach, like you mentioned? How do they kind of foster that relationship with their players?
I mean, it all just goes back to like, you have to act mature. Like, I feel like a lot of my life I've been around older people. My older brother, who is being around those people, it kind of makes it where you feel like you mature a lot quicker, and you understand stuff a lot quicker. When there's some players and people in general who they may be a bit older and they may not understand certain stuff yet, and they're not mature too much. But you just have to like think about it as like, if you're trying to pursue it as coaching is kind of like a job in a lot of the sense. It's like you got to treat it like a job with a lot of the things that you do, and you wouldn't mess about in a job as much as you would in school with your mates. That if they're 20 and they're playing Overwatch and they're trying to go pro, then a lot of the time they may sometimes like a funny joke and all, but they're not there to fully mess about and have that much fun. You got to show that you're also just as serious as they are, and you have the same aspirations as they do. With a lot of the stuff, and they will just come to respect you and understand you and know that you're all fighting towards the same goal in a lot of sense.
Very good. And just on that then, in terms of aspirations, PnR, where do you see yourself going kind of this year, next year?
Well, I kind of luckily it's a bit of life stuff, but like I left school, I left my sixth form school after getting uni unconditional offers, luckily. So like I have a lot of time to spend before I want to go to uni to just, do Overwatch, and I'm just trying to push it and see how far I can take it. If it's going into contenders and going further, I'm always saying little goals to keep on pushing higher. And just, getting through it all and trying to improve everyone. I really enjoy everything with Overwatch, and if I could join OWL and be a coach in OWL and get paid for that, then it would be the ultimate goal of fulfillment. But you can dream big and still have little goals as well, and just push them as far as you can.
Vision, do you echo that goal, or do you have somewhere else in mind?
Yeah, I'm somewhat similar. I mean, I would eventually like to be in the Overwatch League, but again, it's tough. The situations around it are very dire, especially for Western coaches and EU coaches. So it's but yeah, I want to take it as far as I can. I want to keep building teams that I enjoy working with, and I do want to be at the top of contenders at some point. And I'm still super motivated to get into contenders again. Maybe at the moment I want to get this Mind Goblin stuff done. I want us to prove to people that teams can push into contenders without being part of the pre-existing what is believed to be amazing, or the pre-existing set of players that people want to continue echo chambering that they should be the only players there. And I think we have proven to some extent, but we haven't finished that job. And until then, I'll probably stay with Mind Goblin. But if I get a really good offer, you never know. I mean, might do something. I don't know.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone will blame you for it. So yeah, this is it's I think it's of the utmost importance for a coach to actually have this idea of progression in mind. Where can you go with development, and how are you going to improve? And I think in a roundabout sense that is sort of what the coach does for its players as well. So would you have any advice for someone who's maybe low in tier 3, or maybe considering getting involved in the competitive scene, how they're going to develop, and how they should try and develop themselves? I'll go to you, PnR, about this.
I think it would just be don't be scared to be wrong in a lot of the sense. If you're lower, you can afford to be wrong. You're gonna learn every time you make a mistake, and having people combat you in what you say and kind of talking through it all will improve you as a coach. I guess as well as try to watch and study, I guess, when it comes down to the game, so that you understand it a lot more and just understand all the macro and just how to understand each composition and how it really works. But yeah, just don't be afraid to be wrong at all. You'll get told the right thing and you'll start learning and improving, and you'll go up.
Vision, would you echo that?
Yeah, I would echo that, and I would probably add some super important stuff for a lot of current tier 3 players, and that players are really silly sometimes. And I'm not saying they're stupid, or they're new to this. Tier 3 is tough. Tier 3 is hard to sustain. It's hard to learn, and it's super hard to talk to new people and learn new things from them and branch out to people. But a lot of players don't realize that they have a lot of resources there for them that, while they don't appear on the surface, if they dug a little deeper, they could gain access to. A lot of coaches are super easy to access. A lot of coaches will help you out if you DM them. But on the same level as that, I think players, it's very contradictory, but I think a lot of players rely on coaches too heavily as well. So there's a branch between, there's some players that don't even think about the coaches they possibly could learn from. And there's other players that will, instead of reflecting and doing the proper processes in terms of improving, going through and reviewing what their actual issues are on their own. And some players, they don't always have the tools to do this. Some players don't know how to, and that's fine. There are other tools out there for you. But other players will just force themselves into teams as quickly as possible where there are coaches, because no matter the way you put it, coach always sounds like a positive word. And it isn't always a positive word. A coach can be a negative influence on your life if you aren't careful with who you pick. And you need to develop on your own as well. Early tier 3, it's really important that you prioritize learning how you want to think. A lot of Overwatch is not necessarily what you think about the game, but it's a lot what you think of in these critical moments in the game. For example, we can talk about a certain fight and how exactly we should have used things. But the number one really crucial thing is you feeling confident in the decisions you're making at that moment. And I can't do that for you. I can't think for you. I can help you think in the right direction, but only you can form the correct basis for how you want to think. And relying on a coach to do that will not make you a better player. And you need to give yourself that development time on your own. You need to play ranked. You need to review it. You need to spend time putting yourself out there and learning things as much as you can. And then you talk to a coach. Or I mean, again, there are some really good resources you can use, but I think there are some really good examples of players that rely on it way too much.
I think that is very, very solid advice, I have to say, Vision. PnR, would you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think that is very, very solid advice. Absolutely. Okay, guys. Before I leave you go, anyone, any final thoughts?
Thoughts about what?
Just in general, anything you want to say, anything last minute you want to maybe get off your chest. Therapy session here.
Well, I would have to think for a second for this. I'm not sure. I mean, support tier 2, I guess.
Support tier 2.
Support tier 2 is a good one as well.
I think have fun in the game. Like going back to the mental burnout, it's like if you're not having fun when you're playing Overwatch, you're not going to improve. If as much it is kind of like a job, it's not in a sense. You want to enjoy it, and the best way to improve, in my opinion, is to enjoy it and just have fun, because not many people are good enough to kind of push it and be in the thing of trying to go pro in a lot of stuff. So yeah, enjoy the time you have.
Yeah, true.
Okay, guys. Is there anybody out there you would like to see me interview next?
Yeah, I have a few in mind.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if PnR does. I think you should probably interview Xiao. I don't know if he wants to be interviewed, but the guy's super smart. I think he's one of the smartest guys in the EU as well. And I think he would be a really interesting guy to talk to, considering how much experience he has over the years. I guess there are some other players too, some really weird people you could interview, but I don't want to go into those right now, so I'll leave it at that.
PnR, do you have anyone to add?
Nah, I mean, I can't really think of many people. I think Zhao's a good thing. Obviously, content creators are always fun to have on, just to speak to and everything. So, just maybe a Metro. I'd love to see Metro on here. I think
Metro on here.
Metro's got some good views.
He's smart.
Yeah, he's a smart soldier guy.
Yeah, we might be waiting for that one. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, guys, look, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on. You're great to chat to. Really, really insightful stuff there as well. I wish you both the best of luck with whatever you guys get up to in the next couple of months in the year. But yeah, thank you again for coming on, and thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode of Overview. This should go live. We'll be back onto a regular schedule again, popping up every Sunday at 6 CET. So thank you for tuning in. Take care.
Thank you.